Reflection is especially critical because it allows us to look back on what we've done and improve on it. Lesson 5 will show in much more detail a particular example of what happened to the Declaration of Independence, an expressive piece of writing from beginning to end. But let's take a quick look at it and just get a sense of how it changes over time with reflection and as we move from invention to draft to revising. Let's look at invention first. Of course, many historical forces led the main author of the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson, to write the original words during the latter half of June 1776. A committee consisting of Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston was appointed on June 11, 1776, by the Continental Congress to draft a Declaration of Independence. In turn, 33-year-old Jefferson was asked to write the first draft. Now, I'm sure many ideas were running through Jefferson's head at the moment. He had ideas from his experience working in the Virginia legislature. He had ideas from the contemporary events of the time, from the debates going on in the Continental Congress, and no doubt he had ideas from his own education, specifically having read John Locke, whose phrases will show up in the draft of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson would later write that he didn't want to come up with any new ideas, but he wanted to frame and express the current American mind in a spirit that fit the special occasion of the moment. So when he began to draft, he had all these things running around in his head when he sat to put his pen to paper on the first day. History has not preserved the absolutely first draft that Jefferson wrote, but historians have reconstructed what they think might be close to one based on a copy made by John Adams. We do know that while writing, Jefferson lived in Philadelphia at the home of Jacob Graff, a local bricklayer. He frequented the city tavern during the 2 to 3 weeks while writing and complained of the houseflies from the stable across the street. So at some point after putting those ideas down first on paper, Jefferson started the revising process, and the revising process then was added to by the members of the committee and by the Continental Congress as a whole. So let's just look briefly at those 3 particular types of revising. Surely Jefferson edited some as he wrote. History has not preserved his first text, but it's probably somewhere in this moment where Jefferson adapted John Locke's phrase, life, liberty, and estate, to the now more famous life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Probably doing so based on Adam Smith's Scottish Enlightenment idea about the philosophy of happiness. About 150 years later, in the early 20th century, scholars found a little piece of what might be Jefferson's earliest draft, just torn off, that he was going to use to write some other piece on it. If you can just imagine Jefferson tearing up his original draft of the Declaration of Independence. That little piece alone, that little fragment, has 156 words on it, 28% of which were rewritten or re-edited by Jefferson. So clearly Jefferson did some rewriting as he was working on his draft. Once he gave the draft to the committee, we have an approximation of that historians have reconstructed. Notice especially how the very famous first section took shape under the guidance of this small group of editors. That very first section, which is the most famous, actually was the result of Jefferson's original being worked on by the 4 other members of the committee. After the committee presented the draft to the Continental Congress on June the 28th, the Congress first debated the concept and then worked on the draft over 4 days before passing it on July 4th, 1776. The story is that Jefferson sat there quietly, fuming, while the Continental Congress further revised his work, in fact, later calling those revisions mutilations. But there's no doubt that those changes that the Continental Congress made, polishing phrases, rewriting whole sections, tightened the entire document while making enough changes to guarantee that a majority of colonies would approve it. Comparing all 3 drafts shows clearly how many changes were made from the beginning invention process of this document through the drafting and through the revision. On the evening of July 4th, Philadelphia printer John Dunlap was asked to print 200 copies of the Declaration of Independence, and it's that printing that we know today as the Declaration. 24 of those exist to this day. Notice how at each stage this key document takes on a different shape or form, structured and restructured from a more personal document to a public statement of beliefs and principles. In lessons 5 and 6, we'll follow how the Declaration of Independence evolved in more detail. We'll follow how other expressions and other publications have changed. And then we'll also follow some students as their own work evolves from the beginning through the invention, through the drafting, and through the revision.
Vizi online texts are a new kind of textbook, built with the help of great subject matter experts. These new learning resources have already helped thousands of students succeed. Our original content uses animations, simulations, video and graphics, self-assessments, exercises, and review materials to engage students in their study. Our approach is proven to improve learning outcomes, and that's why Vizi exists, to transform lives by making education more engaging.